secret to creating wealth in the Black community? And given that this is a media conference, how does the media factor into perpetuating or eliminating the wealth gap? So you want to start? Bob, you want to start first?
Sure, Maurita. I think both Byron and I have a similar story to tell. But wealth begins, whether you're Black or white, with imagination, an idea, a vision, an ability to sort of bring that story or that vision or that idea, that business concept to someone who would believe in you, and in a capitalist society, if you want to create a business, invest capital with you. And that's a story that is irrespective of race, creed, or color. The problem with in the Black community is that the ideas exist, the vision exists, the work ethic exists, the desire to create something phenomenal for yourself and your family and for your colleagues and your investors. All of those attributes exist within the Black community among Black men and women across the country. The problem is, what doesn't exist is access to capital. And a belief in this society based on over 400 years of racial and economic injustice, that an African American male or female can bring value in the form of creating economic growth and opportunity at the same pace and the same scope and scale as white Americans. And for that reason, that wealth gap, I prefer to call it a wealth chasm, exists, and in my opinion will always exist until you change the notion that Black Americans are not value creators and deserve access to capital in a society that values more than anything else capital in the form of wealth creation.
And that access into achieving wealth in the Black community. And how does the media factor into that? And then we'll get back to you, Bob.
First of all, thank you for having me. I just had one correction on my intro. I've never taken anything public, but hopefully maybe one day. I couldn't agree with Bob anymore. The talent in the Black community is enormous. The entrepreneurial talent is enormous. It's far greater than what you see in most places. If we're given an opportunity to play the game. And what you need to play the game is capital. I've always said one of the miracles about my company was not that, I started the company from my dining room table 27 years ago. It was surviving without access to capital. And by way of example, as to what Bob was saying, I couldn't get a bank loan. And I used to go to factors to factor my receivables. And my receivables were from the biggest corporations in the world, Pepsi and Johnson & Johnson. And I couldn't wait 120 days for them to pay me. So I would go to a factor that charged me as much as 26, 27% interest. And that was the first 15 to 20 years of my existence. And out of the $500 million that I put through a factor, not one penny of it went bad. They all paid because they were the biggest companies in the world. And that's a problem. I probably paid, who knows, $20, $30 million more in interest than I should have paid, that should have stayed in our company. And access to capital is a huge problem. I was very aggressive with President Barack Hussein Obama about this because I said, look, I'm no different than anybody else. When I donate money to you, I have an agenda. You're a politician. Politicians are nothing more than temporary hired help. And I said, my agenda is I want you, President Obama, I want you to audit the banks. And I want you to see if they're lending money to Black people, Negroes, coloreds, whatever decade you want to go to. So there's no ambiguity, not minorities. Because what's happening is the banks are saying, we have a great minority record. But what they're not saying is that they define minorities as white women. And so they will loan tons of money to white women and say, look at our minority record. And that's great. Loan money to everybody. But don't hide behind white women as your way of, hey, I'm doing business with the black community. And I said, if you audit the banks, you will see that black people are not getting bank loans, home loans, car loans, business loans, and that impacts our community and the wealth gap. And the other thing I asked President Obama to do is I said, the United States has a government worker pension fund of over $1 trillion, over $1 trillion, none of it managed by black people or invested in black people. And I would ask you to make sure that we have at least 150 billion of that 1 trillion in the hands of professional black money managers seeking out entrepreneurs like Bob and myself. Now, I ended up owning 100% of my company, not by design. I ended up owning 100% because no one believed in me and no one would invest in me. And I had to build it brick by brick. And I just started at my dining room table and I kept smiling and dialing and dialing and smiling to what we got to this point today. Now we have scale. Now Wall Street is interested, and now Wall Street is lending me money and offering me money at capital at rates that I would say are not predatory and in line with my competitors. But what I went through for the first 30 years, no one should have to go through. And by the way, it was a blessing and a curse. My white counterparts, capital was too easy for them. And when things got bumpy, they got taken out immediately. So it's like a guy who has to go to the gym, bench press, he bench presses 50 pounds versus I had to go to the gym every day and bench press 5,000 pounds. So when things got a little rocky, I was strong because of it, because I had to build it brick by brick. But Bob nailed it. We don't have access to capital.